Okay, welcome to today's session. And for anybody who's online and hasn't met me before, my name is Anna. And the course draws on the magnificent reference text, Path to Enlightenment in Tibetan Buddhism by the great Tibetan spiritual guide and teacher, Venerable Geshe Acharya, Thubten Loden, who's a gentleman just behind me. So we begin each session with prayers, and these are very useful as imaginative and uplifting tools to help our practice. If we put good energy and thought into them, very enjoyable. So we'll begin the session on page 19 with the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha prayer, which we'll do in English. Then we'll do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer and the short mandala offering in both Tibetan and English. So teacher, Bhagawan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly pure and complete Buddha, all-knowing, having poise, Sagata, apprehender of the world, navigator of beings to be subdued, incomparable, teacher of gods and humans, to the Buddha, the Bhagawan, the glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, we prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Sangichodang zoji chonam la jang chu barudani kya suchi dagi jin zogi peso nam ji drola panchi sangi drupajo. To the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. To the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. Then the short mandala offering. The little finger and the thumb together, and the index finger and the second finger together, forming the four continents, and then the ring finger as the mountain, Mount Meru. Zaji poji jujin me to tram rirab ling jinire gyan pari sangye jing du ming de olwaji druken nam dak jin la chopajo. This ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, Mount Meru, the four continents, adorned with sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered thus. May all beings enjoy such pure lands. And then we go to the prayer of the lineage gurus, which we'll do in English. Body born from a million magnificent, excellent virtues, speech fulfilling the hopes of infinite beings, a mind that sees all objects of knowledge precisely, I bow my head to the chief among the Shakyas, supreme sons of the incomparable teacher, carrying the load of all the conqueror's deeds, by their emanations appearing in countless realms. I prostrate to Maitreya and Manjushri. The mother of conquerors is difficult to fathom, the precise thoughts and commentaries written by Jambudvipa's ornaments Nagarjuna and Asanga, I prostrate at the feet of those most renowned in the three realms. From these two great chariots come the excellent lineages of the paths of profound view and vast deeds, their essential points gathered thoroughly and without fault. Prostration to the Lamb holding this treasury of instruction, giving explanation through compassion by seeing precisely and completely the essential points of all paths of Sutra and Tantra, holder of the Conqueror's entire holy Dharma, prostrations to the glorious Losang Drakpa. I, seeing all the infinite teachings, supreme way of crossing for those entering the journey to liberation, moved by compassion to deeds skilled in method, prostrations to the spiritual masters who make everything clear. And then we turn to the great treasury of excellent prayer, the prayer of the past enlightenment, and we do that in English as well. The kind master is the basis of all qualities, and proper reliance is the root of the path. By seeing this excellence and through much striving, bestow blessings to be devoted with great respect. This gentle support of freedom obtained this one time is most difficult to achieve. Knowing its great value gives rise to a mind seizing the essence constantly, day and night. Bestow blessings to generate this continuum unceasingly. It is like a bubble in water, this constantly moving body and life. Thus remember the swift collapse of death. Beyond death, like body and shadow, white and black karmic results follow after. By gaining firm certainty in this, the mass of faults, subtle and very subtle, are abandoned, and the accomplishment of all virtuous collections completed. Bestow blessings to ever retain conscientiousness. The qualities of samsara are unfit to be trusted, the door to all suffering. Do not be content with these enjoyments. By knowing its defects, bestow blessings to develop a great aspiration for the bliss of liberation. By that pure thought, great conscientiousness is drawn forth, and mindfulness and awareness of the individual liberation, the root of the teachings, bestow blessings to make this the essential practice. Just as I myself have fallen into samsara's ocean, all living beings as mother are also like that. By seeing the responsibility for the liberation of beings, bestow blessings to be trained in supreme bodhicitta. However, by merely generating the mind, if not acquainted with the three aspects of ethics, enlightenment will not be attained. By seeing this excellence, bestow blessings to train with strong effort in the vows of the Conqueror's sons, pacifying distraction toward perverse objects by way of proper analysis of the perfect meaning. Bestow blessings to swiftly and continuously generate the path related to the union of calm abiding and special insight, thus becoming a vessel trained in the common paths, into the Vajrayana, supreme evolution of all vehicles. Bestow blessings to engage the easy path itself, that sacred way of crossing for fortunate beings. The base of practice for the two aspects of attainment is when guarding the pure vows of commitment is found to be genuine and certain. Bestow blessings to protect them even at risk of life. Then, by understanding properly the important points, which are the essence of the two stages of the Tantra classes, bestow blessings to practice according to these holy teachings, with continuous effort in the supreme four-session yoga. Like that, may the spiritual friend, revealing the gentle path, and the friends of proper practice stand firm. Bestow blessings to quickly pacify the masses of outer and inner hindrances. In all rebirths may I never be parted from perfect gurus and the enjoyment of the glorious Dharma. By utterly completing all qualities, paths and grounds, may I quickly achieve the state of Vajradhara. So we'll begin the session in our traditional way of doing some samadhi or single-pointed meditation to settle the mind. So whichever place you'd like to sit and get comfortable with a nice straight back, take a breath and relax our shoulders, let the body soften and relax. And resting our hands in the lap, the right hand on top of the other, and the tips of the thumbs touching. So before we commence any meditation, we need to spend some time thinking about this meditation, why we're doing this meditation, establishing a positive motivation for doing so. So we'll begin, once we're settled, to generate the wish to use the positive mental qualities that we develop in this session to benefit ourselves, reduce all suffering, and to extend that as much as we can to our families and our friends, our work colleagues, people in other parts of Australia, even other parts of the world, and all other living beings. There's so much going on in the world, so much suffering, that we can think about this meditation contributing to the settlement of our own minds, and therefore through interconnectedness helping to address some of the terrible events that are happening, such as the floods in New South Wales, mice plague in other parts of Australia, terrible experience of COVID still unravelling in many, many countries, effects still impacting every single part of the world. So may through this meditation and through this class and through improving our own abilities, taking steps towards our own enlightenment, may we benefit all living beings. Step by step, aiming for more happiness, more peace, more contentment, more wisdom, more concentration, and less suffering for those and everyone else. Those we love and everyone else. So having established a clear motivation for this practice, we bring our attention to the breath, to relax our body and mind. In the place we most prefer, whether the rising and falling of the diaphragm or chest, or through the nostrils, in and out through the nostrils. Choose our place, and then we observe very closely the movement of the breath. We let go very gently all of our other thoughts, all of our other issues or plans for tomorrow, what happened this morning, any sensations. Just let them go gently and return our concentration to the breath. Small part of our mind watches out for any of these distractions and just labels them distractions. And returns our main attention to the breath. So next we're going to practice the 9-round breathing meditation. This is a very useful meditation to begin a session with, especially if you've had a very busy and active time. Your mind is very agitated or very discursive. So a few rounds of the 9-round breathing technique can quickly settle the mind and stabilise our focus as a precursor to a more sustained meditation practice. So in this exercise we are going to imagine that we alternate our breathing through one nostril at a time. So we're going to do that through mental focus. There is an exercise also where you can use your finger to hold one side of the nostril, but we'll do the imagining one today. And so for the first 3 rounds of breathing, we're going to imagine as strongly as we can that we breathe out through the left nostril. We breathe in through the left nostril and out through the right nostril. Then for the next 3 rounds of breathing, we reverse the process. So we breathe in through the right nostril and out through the left nostril. So then we do the final 3 rounds of the 9-round breathing by focusing on breathing in and out through both nostrils. So then we're going to do that whole round another 2 times. So I'll go through it the first time, and then if you can do it the second time yourselves. So for the first 3 rounds of breathing, we imagine as strongly as we can that we breathe in through the left nostril and out through the right nostril. Then the next 3 rounds in reverse, breathing in through the right nostril and out through the left. And then for the final, or the third of these 3 rounds, then focus on breathing in and out through both nostrils. And then continue to do another series. And then when you've done the next series, return to the normal rhythm of the breath and observe how the breath may have rounded and softened a little. You just observe our breath again for a short while. So when you're ready, you can release your concentration. So today's session, we're following the tradition of any graduated path course, which is to look at an explanation of the life story of the compilers and teachers of the graduated path tradition. So they provide great inspiration, and if we think deeply about the times that these people lived in, then we'll be even more, find it even more remarkable. For example, no electricity, no mobile phones, no cars, no digital technology, no computers, very rudimentary plumbing if there was any. So that made these kind of achievements in a very, very different world than the world that we experience is even more amazing. And so these remarkable teachers and spiritual guides reached the state of enlightenment, and then they set about to teach us the same. And this is a blueprint that we have in the path to enlightenment, and a full mind training that enables us to reach the same. So the first of these was Shakyamuni Buddha, in the beautiful statue behind me, who began a charmed life, protected and carefully nurtured as Prince Siddhartha, with a view to him then assuming the throne. But while he was still a young man, he took another direction, and he decided to investigate the charmed world that he had experienced within the inner palace. And so when he did that, he came across the sufferings of aging and of sickness and death. And when he experienced those aspects of life, many thoughts and questions and ideas stirred deep within his mind. He was even further stimulated when he then observed a yogi, and he determined at that point, regardless of the entreaties of his family, to start this life, this spiritual life. So, however, in the path to enlightenment, and then he then went on and he, through this process and this study and this great magnificence and brilliance of his insights, he then discovered the real nature and understanding of the mind and the Four Noble Truths and the realisation of emptiness and so many other qualities. But the point that Geshe makes in the path to enlightenment, that it is very clear that in lifetimes before, the Buddha himself was an ordinary person, a completely ordinary person. He made this clear himself. Many of the great teachers have made this clear since then. So he experienced all of the things that we experience: fear and anxiety and loneliness and doubt, indecision, dissatisfaction, stress. He felt completely unloved, unappreciated for everything that he did and the person that he was, disdained, disliked. And all these difficulties that we and every other person and the many other difficulties that people experience are things that the Buddha himself experienced as well. So Geshe goes on to explain in the path to enlightenment. He says, just like us, he was caught in the cycle of highs and lows, life after life, repeating the same old mistakes and habituated responses to the circumstances that he encountered. He went on to achieve the perfections of peace and harmony, compassion and wisdom, and as such he remains a beacon of hope for millions of humans, beings in literally dozens of countries. So the Buddha image itself really represents our own enlightened potential. I read a quote a couple of days ago which sort of explained that sometimes a mistake is made that we think that the Buddha is still existing as some kind of, person up there watching over us and creating all of this. There can be that kind of feeling because he's such an inspiring being. But the point that he was making was really that we have this potential within us that is actually to achieve that Buddha potential, to be that Buddha within us, and that's what he is. He's a beacon of hope for that. So if we can wrap all of our worldly activities into Dharma practice, we also can experience the great change, this great transformation that the Buddha himself made from being living an everyday life, an ordinary life, to living a life not as someone demanding great honour, as somebody who's just wanting to help others to achieve the same and to pass that on. And recognising that he as an ordinary person had that potential, and we also have that potential, and he's done everything that he can to help us to reach that potential and have the same experience as him. So the Graduated Path book is sprinkled with the Buddha's Sutras, which are short or concise wisdoms to summarise the teaching and assist our recall. So they are summarised with the other great verses in the back of the Path to Enlightenment under the title, under the appendix of quotations, and they're pertaining to the different chapters within the Path to Enlightenment. So the Buddha practiced a graduated path to enlightenment, it is said, during many of his previous lifetimes, as did the great scholars like Nagarjuna and Asanga, Dharmakirti, Chandrakirti, Atisha, and great Tibetan teachers and meditators like Geshe and Milarepa. By understanding how these great teachers and meditators practiced, Geshe says we will appreciate the value and rarity of these teachings and have very, significant inspiration for our own journey. So both Atisha and Tsongkhapa are two teachers with very special relevance to the graduated path to enlightenment. And so they are literally giants of our lineage of teachings, much as the health sector might, appreciate Louis and Marie Pasteur, or Mother Teresa in the charitable world and humanitarian world. People would respect and appreciate Mother Teresa for her nursing and her charitable works, her endless kindness that she showed to people. So there can people that we, within those of us who study the graduated path to enlightenment, would have great respect for Atisha and Lama Tsongkhapa. So Atisha brought these teachings from India into Tibet, and as part of that he travelled in the 14th century, which is a very long time ago, with a group of followers across wild oceans to find a special teacher who knew about the exceptional concept known as bodhicitta and the mind of enlightenment. So the other essential figure in the formation of these teachings is the extraordinary Lama Geshe, who greatly expanded on the essence of the teachings by Atisha's work, The Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment. So Geshe, he worked continuously to expand and reinforce the foundation of the graduated path teachings across Tibet. So let's learn a little bit more about each of these truly phenomenal people. Atisha was also born into a royal family, this time in East Bengal in 982 AD. He was the middle son in this case, and there were many signs when he was born that he was a special little boy. Geshe said, in fact, that he was just 18 months old when his parents took him to a local temple, and the young prince prayed with this extraordinary verse: "May they be like me, with perfect parents, abundant merit, born the prince of a powerful king. May they all be sustained by the holy Dharma." As you might imagine, everybody was astounded by an 18-month-old being able to say a verse that is that beautiful. He then went on further. "I have attained leisure and fortune, a supreme human body with defect-free senses. I see the three jewels, ever respectfully holding them at the crown of my head. From this day forth, may they be my refuge. I will never be bound by worldly activities, but remaining in the Sangha, acquire a wealth of Dharma. I will humbly make offerings to the three jewels. May I look on all living beings with compassion." Atisha proved an exceptional student, following such an auspicious beginning, including philosophy and logic and medicine and all his Buddhist studies. He was one of the few people of his era who understood the difference between Buddhist and non-Buddhist thought. In a similar fashion to the Buddha, his parents weren't particularly keen on him becoming a monastic, but he was very determined and had a very strong inclination to do this. And Geshe then explains the story of Atisha having a vision of the female Buddha Tara, appearing to Atisha and saying this marvellous verse: "Noble one, do not be attached. Do not be attached, O fortunate one. It is like an elephant stuck in a swamp, for a hero like you to become stuck in a swamp of desire. Those clothed in ethics do not sink." So in essence, Tara was encouraging Atisha to live a quiet monastic life and of meditation, and so Atisha then made this request to his parents, who eventually accepted the situation, and he left the palace for intensive study and practice. He dived into his studies with tremendous vigour and had wonderful teachers. But although he understood the nature of reality quite easily, he had love and compassion, he had a strong feeling that was something not quite right in the teachings, that there was not a full, the teachings somehow weren't quite full. So he asked himself, what is the most important element or aspect for reaching enlightenment? So while he was circumambulating a stupa, Atisha heard the word bodhicitta, and he became completely determined to find out about what this term bodhicitta was. I was very, very curious, because he had obviously thought that there was a gap in the teachings, and then he heard this word bodhicitta, resonated with him really strongly. So of all the ancient teachers, we could arguably say that Atisha has the strongest of connections with the Southern Hemisphere. So more than 1,000 years ago, he travelled a very perilous journey. As you can imagine, he travelled from India to Indonesia in a craft looking for a teacher that he'd heard of by the name of Salingpa. And Salingpa was based in Indonesia. So he found the Salingpa at the still famous Buddhist site at Borobudur in Java. I don't know if anyone has ever had the good fortune, you've had the good fortune to go to Borobudur. I've seen photos, and it must be a truly marvellous experience. I can imagine it's quite a vast site and there's so much carving into the stone. Is that how you would describe it, Vanessa? Wonderful. So the journey took 13 months, and even when he arrived in Indonesia, he took his time to check what he could find out about Salingpa, which is the right thing to do when you're wanting to take teachings. So he investigated Salingpa, who is also known as Suvana VP, to check his suitability as a guru. So he did that, and he went to visit him, and Salingpa told Atisha that he should study bodhicitta for 12 years. He took that advice and he stayed in Indonesia to study for the next 12 years. Salingpa also told him that he should be considering travelling to the north of India, and that there was people in the north of India who were really in need of his advice, and it would bring an enormous benefit. After the 12 years, Atisha actually did return again across those wild oceans to India, and he went to Nalanda Monastery, which was the seat of Buddhism within India, and he then became the abbot of Nalanda Monastery and taught thousands and thousands of people. And Buddhism was already, at that point in time, Buddhism was already quite widespread in Tibet, but there was a lot of confusion, and there were many charlatans who were teaching giving incorrect teachings. So there was a lot of debate and discussion. It was a really difficult time in getting the settings right. So the great Tibetan king, whose name was Lalama Geshe O, he was really distressed about this. He was a very kind and compassionate king, and he was really worried about everything that was going on in Tibet at that time. So he sent 21 Tibetan scholars on a journey, a very arduous journey, and we need to think about the times, across the Himalayas and into India, to visit Nalanda, which was the great monastery there, to see if he could find a teacher, and also to learn how to translate the sutras and the tantras. Unfortunately, most of these scholars, of these 21 scholars, passed away because there was such a big contrast between the cold and then going into the heat of India was quite difficult. But two of them did exceptionally well, and their names were Rinchen Sangpo and Loden Sherab, and they managed to do all the studies and became very expert in the Dharma through everything that they learned at the great seat of learning at Nalanda. And they then returned to Tibet to advise the king, the Lama Geshe O, to advise the king of that Atisha was the great teacher of the time. The king was naturally really excited and happy about this, and he immediately dispatched a representative to make a personal request to Atisha to visit. I think Chris is pointing that he's up there. Is that right? No? So Atisha had been advised, or was advised at that time, that his life would be shortened if he went into Tibet, but if he did go into Tibet, he would be creating enormous benefit. So he did decide to take, despite that advice, he did decide to take the trip into Tibet, and he taught all of the sutras and tantras, and he also wrote this really seminal, important text called The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. And so the result of that was that the Tibetan people all learned how to practice correctly, and to this day, His Holiness the Dalai Lama continuously praises Nalanda Monastery. It was really, the pure teachings were taught there, and a truly wonderful thing that then Atisha then took them into Tibet, and we're now, all these hundreds of years later, the beneficiaries of that experience. So Atisha's great gift to the world, his incredible gift to the world, was his absolute determination and exceptional courage with a commitment that under whatever circumstances that he experienced, travelling all that way to Indonesia, but then also travelling back from Indonesia and then travelling over the mountains into Tibet when he'd already been warned that his life would be shortened. He thought, I am going to practice, I'm going to become a bodhisattva like a saint, and I'm going to progress on the path to enlightenment in order to help all living beings. That was his absolute commitment, and all these hundreds of years later, the benefit is still being felt. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama says in a translated commentary on the lamp by Atisha himself, so he made a commentary, he wrote the lamp for the path to enlightenment is only 6 pages long. So it's quite a short series of verses over 6 pages. And he wrote a commentary himself, and His Holiness, it was then translated into English, and at that point His Holiness did a comment in the introduction and in the foreword, and he said that the Atisha taught that the Buddha's message was primarily a method to relieve the suffering of living beings. His Holiness said, he sought to heal the division which threatened the spread of Buddhism in Tibet by emphasizing the central Buddhist teachings and by showing clearly that each teaching was relevant at the appropriate time and for the appropriate person. So what he did was he healed by acknowledging that there was value in each of the teachings and then bringing that people together through that healing and through that acknowledgement. So he stressed the value in all the branches of Buddhist teachings, His Holiness said. So as mentioned, this lamp text has been the basis of many Buddhist texts and teachings still taught throughout the world. It's highly relevant to our modern lives, setting out a clear path for how to follow the teachings for practitioners of all capabilities and backgrounds. But as I mentioned, it's only 6 pages long and quite challenging for us to follow the full implications of what is being said. It's not so much that it's hard to understand, but there's a lot of implications. If you have the chance to read the 6 pages, you'll see what I mean. There's a lot of implications in each of the verses. And so there's a lovely verse here that caught my eye. Just as a bird with unfledged wings cannot fly up into the sky, so without the, this is an interesting word, so without the super knowledge's power, which is one word, super knowledge's power, one cannot work for the good of others. So he's comparing it to the bird with the unfledged wings and saying that if we really have this passion, that we really want to work for others, then this is what we need to do. We need to follow this path. So he's saying that in this kind of really pithy way. So what then happened, of course, is this exceptional great Lama, Geshe composed several commentaries on Atisha's teachings, and that made them a lot more accessible to, and so that we began to get a much better understanding of everything that was encapsulated in those verses, and made it possible for us to sort of more easily, or us and hundreds and thousands of people before us and all over the world. So the 600th, so the most extensive of those commentaries was called the Great Exposition of the Stages of the Path, and that's the basis of Geshe's path. So the 600th anniversary of Geshe Tsongkhapa's passing in 2019 resulted in events in India and Buddhist temples and centres across the world to mark this occasion. So during these celebrations, this is a quote again from His Holiness. He said, "Of the many works of the Tibetan master Tsongkhapa, none compares in terms of popularity and breadth of influence, with his great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which has been treasured by practitioners and scholars alike for centuries. What distinguishes it as one of the principal texts of Mahayana Buddhism is its scope and clarity. The various stages are presented so clearly and systematically that they can be easily understood and put into practice. So another great teacher of the 20th century was Prabhanka Rinpoche, and he was renowned for teaching vast numbers of lay people. And he said, and it's very poetically he says, if we keep even a drop of the nectar of the name of this holy being, Lama Tsongkhapa, in a devotional heart, it plants the seed of liberation, and one receives the fortune to practice and enjoy happiness from this life up to enlightenment. So there is no doubt that by doing, so we owe a massive debt to Lama Tsongkhapa and to Geshe Loden for creating the pure English version. In Tibetan Buddhism, Geshe Tsongkhapa is regarded as a future Buddha. From a very young age, he was also recognised as a great holy being. He took ordination at 7, and through intensive study, he quickly became a great yogi and scholar. He was renowned for his enormous energy and effort. He was moving around Tibet, teaching thousands and thousands of people. Actually, if you read, I haven't read all of Thubten Jinpa's biography, but I've read another one, and it's just mind-blowing how much energy and effort that he put into travelling all over Tibet and teaching at different monasteries and giving great retreats, and thousands of people would gather to listen to him. Eventually, at the end of his teaching period, he decided he had some advice directly from Manjushri, and Manjushri suggested that he should go into a very long retreat. So he said to his students before he went into a long retreat, then please study my path to enlightenment. That is what I am leaving behind for you to focus on. This is my representative. So he was completely humble as a person, and during his long years of practice, he had very few resources. After he'd finished his teachings, he still had very few resources. He went to a remote area and completed many retreats and many mandala offerings, and built many stupas and did so many practices. And he used only a stone, said that he only used a stone slab with a sand mandala with sand as the mandala offering, and in this way he actually managed to create problems for his hands because he had so few resources. So I mentioned this amazing book that Thubten Jinpa recently wrote. He wrote it in time for the 600th anniversary celebrations. Professor Thubten Jinpa, and I've had the opportunity to read a few snippets, and it's a beautiful book. So if you're interested in learning more about Geshe Tsongkhapa, I'd encourage you to have a look. And in this book, he quotes this wonderful Tsongkhapa verse on a topic we explored in the last couple of weeks. He said, good and bad karma are functions of your intention. When your intention is good, everything becomes good. When your intention is bad, everything becomes bad. So everything depends on your intention. So Thubten Jinpa, he explains in this book that Tsongkhapa's great gift was in fact to develop a truly integrated worldview, a Buddhist path in which rational inquiry supported rather than undermined a robust spiritual view of enlightenment. So I think we've talked previously about, analytical meditation and the value of kind of pulling it apart, as the Buddha said, that we should look at all the teachings as a gold tester. And so what Thubten Jinpa is saying is that Tsongkhapa's showing that how we can do that without there being like massive debate is to analyse and to support the actual practice as opposed to creating, division in the practice, which is really, I found very interesting. So he demonstrated, Thubten Jinpa says, he demonstrated that the application of analysis to understanding reality and our human existence could underpin a profound quest for meaning, which is, I thought, quite insightful and interesting perspective. So Geshe explains in The Path to Enlightenment that Tsongkhapa was in fact already enlightened and a manifestation in fact of Manjushri. So he performed all of these deeds according to Geshe to teach his students and followers about the way to conduct ourselves and how we ourselves can pursue this path. So his very pure ethics and pure behaviour attracted so much great faith and devotion. And his very final teaching was that we should practice the graduated path to enlightenment continuously and steady, whether we experience good or bad circumstances, regardless of what our circumstances are, that we need to keep going through this. Suggesting that our course of our circumstances, whatever they are based on our previous karmas. So the best thing that we can do is, regardless of what karmas we're experiencing at the present, is to just keep going with our studies. So both Atisha and Tsongkhapa remain like these incredible beacons of hope in a very challenging and fragmented world. And they're really their courage and their wisdom and their compassion and their love, they're really exemplars of the possibility of life and beyond for us all. And as they both taught, and as the Buddha both taught, they also were once in the place that we're all sitting now, with all the challenges that we face. So there are many other great figures of exceptional inspiration. In the world of Tibetan Buddhism, Milarepa stands out for the dramatic changes he made in just one life. So he was an 11th century yogi and poet, and he started life as a black magician, and he took revenge for the loss of his natural heritage. He had a terrible time. Just recently listened to a book about his life story again, and he had a truly terrible time and responded in a very inappropriate manner by creating hailstorms, and lots of people passed away. So eventually he became completely, he had the essence of great kindness within him, and he'd been overtaken by his negativities and his rage and anger at what had happened. So he eventually became incredibly remorseful about what he'd done, and he sought to expiate these crimes with a really, really strong dedication to his teacher, Mapa Lotsawa, and Milarepa devoted himself to unremitting practice. And the story is quite unbelievable of the feats and the exercises he undertook under the directions of his guru before his guru would even give him 1 second of teaching. So he practiced the most strong possible guru devotion, recognising and believing that his teacher Mapa Lotsawa was incredibly kind and helping him to get through this crisis that he'd experienced. And so eventually his teacher, Mapa Lotsawa, sent him off to the caves to meditate, and he existed on nothing but nettles. And he too also eventually had many, many, many students who came to visit him. So among his Milarepa's most famous quotes In the monastery of your heart, you have a temple where all Buddhas unite. The affairs of the world will go on forever. Do not delay the practice of meditation. Once you have met with profound instructions from a meditation master, with single-pointed determination, set about realizing the truth. So these are some of just a few of the great teachers of the past. In the modern times, we can look to great modern figures like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and our own centre's founder and spiritual guide, Venerable Geshe Acharya Thubten Loden, for inspiration. So His Holiness's activities are very well documented. He has great human compassion and courage and conviction that he has used as his tools in carving a path for peace. And so for more than 60 years since he left Tibet, after the Chinese invasion, His Holiness has struggled continuously to better the lives of Tibetan people. And as doing so, he's been a shining light to the world and all of those fighting freedom around the world. And he's also studied the Dharma and continuously travelled the world until he was well into his 80s, and now has continued to do that every week in online courses with students from centres and universities from around the world. So it might be really, we've had the Dalai Lama in our lives for most of our lives, and it might be, easy to take him for granted as a great world figure, but it can't last forever. His presence in our world, it can't last forever. So we can just count how incredibly blessed we've been able to have such a person on the world stage in our lives. So again, Geshe Loden, he arrived in Australia at about 55 and having studied in both Tibet and India for about 50 years, and he worked tirelessly for over 30 years to establish and develop the teachings here and benefit others. So in his mid-60s, when most other people are thinking about retiring, Geshe commenced life here in Europe, and following purchase of the centre which he organised. And he commenced, at that point, he commenced work on 9 books. He was building temples and continuing to teach and counsel hundreds, all his students in preparation for the years beyond. Every morning he would feed the birds before breakfast and walk to keep fit. On Saturday mornings he would come to the gardens to show us how to garden and how to develop this beautiful garden and maintain it. And he was a really expert in every aspect of centre life. He was really the expert, and carefully and thoroughly he taught his students on how to best look after the centre and conduct each aspect of centre life. And so his biography is at the back of the prayer book, and it's really worth reading it, periodically for inspiration to realise and think quite deeply about what that meant. We sometimes we can read biographies quite lightly and just, oh, that's interesting, well, that's that person and that's that person. But if we try and think about it and bring it into our own worlds and our own experience, then we realise how completely extraordinary it is. As most of us who met Geshe Loden will recall, it was really quite awe-inspiring to be in his presence. And I read once that it is a testament and a proof of a great person that people are prepared to continue their work well after they've passed away. So Geshe Loden, there are many people who are still really happy to keep doing his work, continue to study his books. Right across the world there are people studying his books in centres of students around the world. And to do as he asked in maintaining this program, which he developed a framework, and to keep doing the work that he advised us to do. So reflection on all these teachers and many others within the Indian and Buddhist traditions, these can give us tremendous inspiration for our own studies They can be especially useful if our mind is a little bit sluggish. You know, if our mind is struggling to get our meditation practice going, you know, struggling to keep up our studies, just need something a little bit easier. And, you know, studying these biographies can be really very, very moving. People like Shantideva and Nagarjuna and Asanga and so forth, they can also be very, very inspiring for us. So let's now do some meditation, and we'll this time we're going to visualize Shakyamuni Buddha and reflect on the qualities of Shakyamuni Buddha. So if you could please resume your meditation, your perfect meditation postures. So we begin just by refocusing our attention on the breath, and then generating a motivation for this meditation. The wish to be of utmost benefit to all living beings. Understanding the teachings, practicing the teachings, aiming to achieve full awakening, the enlightenment. Similar to Shakyamuni Buddha and some of these great teachers, Geshe and so forth. So that we too contribute the best we can to relieving suffering, creating more and more happiness for ourselves, our loved ones, strangers, all living beings. So then we visualize that our forehead, not too high, not too low, a precious throne in the nature of light, supported by 8 mighty lions. On top of the throne is a light-natured lotus flower with beautiful petals of many varied colours. On top of the lotus is a moon cushion representing great love, great compassion and bodhicitta. Top of the moon cushion is a sun cushion, brilliant, representing emptiness of self and emptiness of phenomena. Sitting on these is Shakyamuni Buddha, as shown by the traditional Buddha behind me. Body is golden coloured in the nature of light. His hands rest on his right hand rests on his right knee. In the earth touching gesture, representing the purification of all negativities. His left hand rests in his lap, in the gesture of meditative equipoise. And he holds a begging bowl filled with nectar, the nectar of purification. He is wearing the saffron-coloured robes of a monk and has the 32 major marks and 80 minor signs of a perfect enlightened being. Such as Dharma wheels on the palms of his hands and the soles of his feet. Which represent having cared very carefully for his parents and also greeting teachers and farewelling them. Like a beautiful straight back, representing having abandoned killing. Like beautiful shaped hands. His body, composed of light, is clear and translucent. He sits in the Vajra posture and emanates countless rays of light in all directions. At his heart, we visualize a small lotus with a sun disk on top. Seated on this is Konkra Vajradhara with a deep blue coloured body in the nature of light. He also sits in the Vajra position. And has one face and two arms. His right hand holds a Vajra, symbolizing the method wing of the path. And his left hand holds a bell, symbolizing the wisdom wing. At Vajradhara's heart is the blue seed syllable hum. We can use the Tibetan version if we know it, or we can use HUM. The hum is the concentration being and symbolizes the Buddha's wisdom truth body. Guru Shakyamuni is the commitment being and symbolizes the emanation body. Vajradhara is the wisdom being and symbolizes the complete enjoyment body. These three beings are known as the incorporation of the three bodies. Guru Shakyamuni Buddha is surrounded by our direct and lineage gurus, some of the people that I've named today. Shantideva, Geshe, Sangha, and so on, and your own personal meditation deities, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dharma heroes, Dakinis and Dharma protectors. In front of each of these holy beings, we visualize their teachings as scriptures in the nature of light resting on tables. This is known as the field of merit. And these holy beings are looking favourably on us. They are smiling gently. By reflecting on their qualities and kindness, we generate strong faith in their qualities. Then we visualize that we're surrounded by other living beings. Thousands and thousands of living beings, all in the forms of humans. So we visualize that nectar and 5 different coloured lights: white, red, blue, orange and green descend from the heart of the Buddha and of the direct and lineage gurus, and dissolve into our bodies and minds of ourselves and all beings. This light purifies all negativities created during limitless lifetimes. All these negativities are purified, visualized as soot, or black liquid, or black light, washed out of our body completely, or disappear as darkness eliminated by light. These are the blessings of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Lifespan, merit and realizations increase. Body and mind are completely purified. And transformed into the nature of light. So we focus on the short prayer of going for refuge. To the Buddha, the Dharma and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. We generate bodhicitta by reciting and reflecting on this prayer. Through the merits of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. So after reciting this prayer, we visualize that a duplicate Buddha emanates and dissolves into us. Duplicate Buddha sits on the crown of our head, then step by step dissolves into light and dissolves into us. We think we have become Guru Shakyamuni Buddha and oneness with his body, speech and mind. We concentrate on this. I am Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. With ourselves as Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, light emanates from the body, reaching out to all living beings, completely purifying all their negativities and eliminating their sufferings. Our friends and family, the people we don't know, or the humans, the 7.6 billion humans across the world, millions and millions and billions of animals and insects and birds, other beings like hungry ghosts and hell beings, form and formless realms, gods and demigods and bardo beings. Visualize that they too become transformed into Shakyamuni Buddhas. Some as big as mountains, some as big as sesame seeds. Billions and billions of Shakyamuni Buddhas. Completely purified. Completely free of suffering. Completely full of love and compassion and bodhicitta. The emptiness of inherent existence and all the qualities. We develop the divine pride of having achieved enlightenment and then liberated all living beings. So then, in recognition of the effort of this meditation and this class, we can dedicate the positive energy we have created towards more happiness in our life, more good conditions, better health, and also happiness and good conditions for the people that we love and for all living beings. And then we do the final prayer of the graduated path on page 31. By the two collections vastest space, amassed with effort for a long time, may I become a chief of conquerors, a guide for all beings whose mind-eye is blinded by ignorance. Also in all lives, while not yet come to that, may Manjushri favour me with his compassion. Finding the supreme path, complete with all stages of the teachings, may I please the conquerors by practising well, by my precise understanding of the essential points of the path, with skillful means drawn along by strong compassion, and by dispelling the mental darkness of beings, may I uphold the conqueror's teaching for a long time. Where the supreme precious teaching has not spread, also where it has spread but become degenerate, the mind deeply moved by great compassion, may I make clear this treasure of benefit and bliss. The stages of the path, excellently established by the marvellous deeds of the conquerors and their sons, give glory to the minds of those aspiring for liberation. May the conqueror's deeds be long preserved. May all humans and non-humans who remove the obstructions and establish conditions favourable to cultivating the excellent path never be parted for all of their lifetimes from the purest of paths which the Buddhas have praised. When someone makes effort to practice properly the 10 points of conduct of the Supreme Vehicle, may he always be assisted by the mighty protectors, and may oceans of good fortune spread out reaching all. Then we do the general dedication on page 34 in Tibetan and English. Gyawade cheba kun zo nam ye ji, zo zo jing, zo nam ye ji, le zhong wei, dam pa kuni, zhe pa zhe. By this virtue may all beings complete the collections of wisdom and merit, and attain the two holy bodies arisen from wisdom and merit. Jiangyu Zem Jorin Boje Ma Chi Panam Chi Ge Ji Pa Nyam Pa Me Pa E Gone Gone Pel Pa Jo. May the precious superior mind of enlightenment be generated in those who have not yet generated it, and not decrease in those who have developed it, but increase continuously. Okay, so next week, 28th of March, is we will go through the path structure in more detail and do a longer, slightly longer Shakyamuni Buddha meditation. I'll bring the handout that acts as a guide to the path. There's a really great handout that gives us a bit of a way through, and also if we're wanting to have particular issues to tackle at a particular time, and that gives us a bit of a guide on how to do that. So the end of March is the end of term 1. The week after that is our Easter retreat led by Tim McKibben. If anyone's interested in joining that, that's an online retreat. And term 2, so we have got a class next week. Then we have the Easter retreat, then we have a week's break, and then term 2 commences on the 18th of April. So also just like to ask if anyone is interested in, is coming along regularly and would like to help with the teas or entry during term 2, either during path or intro, could you please see Christine, who is out serving teas today. So that would be wonderful. So thanks very much for coming along. If you've got any questions, perhaps we'll do it over tea or just outside. Taking note of the time, I seem to go over. Sorry about that.